Okay, so to revisit our project objectives real quickly, we needed to discover current activities at each site, and as you saw in part one, we did that. We needed to understand the barriers and opportunities for communicating and collaborating about climate change and really feel that we did that in this inventory. And then finally, we had to integrate all of this into a strategy, and that's really where you come in, and the workshops that we've hosted over the past year come in, and all of these ideas for changing the conversation about climate change. So we took some time in September and met with our advisory board, and Karina created this visual. It was much larger. I've sort of zoomed in on just the future of the partnership, as you can see in the center of the picture, and the desire to fill some research needs and identify some gaps, but also start to develop the strategy with a very specific goal that is linked to the local sites. Building a national network, but having that local place-based component is so important to us. So we started to outline this, and this is really what we're going to flesh out on January 11th and 12th. Hopefully you can follow me for a second here because it's a little bit confusing. I'll start step by step. First, the goal of our strategy, in fact the goal that is requested by the National Science Foundation, is that we facilitate some type of climate change engagement that links climate science with public understanding of climate change and motivation to action. So we've simplified this to say facilitate place-based climate change engagement. That's what makes our strategy unique from the ones that we'll be competing against. With that as our overall goal, we really have the potential to reach 3 target audiences, and I'm thinking of them along this continuum from staff working in-house and then partnering with our local community, which could include local government and other NGOs, but the youth could be the primary component of that, and then outreach to visitors. So building a network that links the refuge and park staffs across their boundaries with the community that is interspersed among them, and then start to use the messages that are developed as an outreach to visitors to parks and refuges. So how are we going to do this? Well, first we have 2 outcomes. One, that we want to build relationships and share resources. That's going to help facilitate place-based climate change engagement. Second, we want to demonstrate this community engagement and the relationships that have been built among the 2 agencies, Fish and Wildlife and National Park Service, their staffs, and then the community that they live in and the youth that are growing up there. So what are some objectives to do this? Again, following 2 parallel threads, building those relationships and sharing resources requires that we build a local network, a local collaborative climate change engagement network. Second, demonstrating community engagement and facilitating public engagement with climate change means that we use that local network to promote sustainable behavior changes. So 2 primary objectives with several opportunities, activities to meet those objectives. The first being facilitate staff and gateway community collaboration. Again, and when I say staff, I mean across both agencies. And second, build this place-based community-specific toolkit. So we have a suite of ideas, things that have come out in all of the brainstorming at the workshops, and now it's time for the community to pick what is relevant and interesting and feasible for them. And this is where I think it gets really interesting. So my sense is that once we get the staff and the community to collaborate, then we actually have another interpretive message. So Jim Covell, a member of our advisory board from the Monterey Bay Aquarium, very eloquently told the story of having a good ask, meaning after visitors view the interpretive program about climate change, what are you going to ask them to do? If you're asking them to change a light bulb, does that mean that climate change is merely a light bulb switch away, that it's such a trivial issue that all it takes is to change a light bulb. And if it really isn't that serious and all you're asking me to do is change a light bulb, then why even bother? So we want to have an appropriate ask. We want people to do something that matches the gravity of the problem. But we don't want to ask them to install solar panels and buy hybrid and live in a cave and, eat vegan. We want to be realistic. So what if the ask was something very meaningful, something very heartfelt, something that was rooted in community? So we start to build a network at these local sites. We identify and see changes and issues together. We start to write those stories, and we put it in climate change into this very local context of what it means for children growing up near this refuge or park in this community. We get other NGOs and the local government involved in this collaborative climate change engagement effort. Then that becomes the story for interpretation at the visitor center. In fact, visualize with me a display at a trailhead or in the museum or along a boardwalk that says, our community cares and we're concerned, and so our scientists are asking these questions and our politicians are asking these questions, and together we're talking about climate change and what it means for our natural resources, but also for our citizens and for our community, for the people who live right here. And then the ask, the thing at the bottom of the interpretive display is, have you talked to your neighbor about climate change? How can you engage with your community about issues relevant to a changing climate and your livelihood? So essentially personalizing the ask, giving them something that they can take away and take home to any place. You can see glaciers melting at Kenai and then go home to Indianapolis and, well, there's no glaciers here, climate change isn't here. But the odds are there's something that's changing, and encouraging the visitor to take that climate change engagement souvenir, take that idea that we can talk about climate change. We can change the conversation about climate change and make it about us and make it relevant and make it personal. And we can use some very specific communication tools to do so. We can use digital storytelling. We can create some interactive web-based media. And we can engage citizens in collaborative science and climate change research with the parks and refuges. And above all, we can develop some evaluation and monitoring tools so that we can survey our visitors in a unified OMB approved way. We can monitor the impact of different interpretive programs and of the collaborative effort itself. So that's the big picture, that's the vision, that's what we've at least initially come up with based on everything that we've learned over the past year from our partners. And it really is about fundamentally changing the way we communicate about climate change so that we do empower and engage our communities, primarily youth, and our visitors in a much needed civic conversation about what do we do now as a people, as a group, as a community, as brothers and sisters sharing the planet. And so that's the big vision, and that's what we're going to try to put some sideboards and drive away with at the January 11th and 12th meeting. So again, just to recap, we've got representatives from all over the country coming to Palmetto Bay. Kenai will be there, folks from Puget Sound, Northern Colorado's representing, and the DC area are all traveling to Southern Florida. Here are my arrows again. And then we will have our meeting in Palmetto Bay, and that's where hopefully we'll have a draft, at least an outline of the strategy to move forward. So day one will be big picture planning, and we'll also have a webinar with the National Science Foundation for an hour during the middle of the day, where they'll tell us the expectations and the protocol for putting together the phase 2 proposal, of which you will all be partners. So we envision writing a $5 million proposal, and you will, every single one of you will have a piece of that, and you will be part of the success of that proposal. And so this is the ultimate collaborative exercise, and I think it is so important that we have your input, and I'm so gracious that you're taking the time to be there with us. On the second day, we'll really fine-tune it for the local. What will be the place-based component, and what activities and tools you need in your toolbox and resources do you need to get it launched. After the meeting, we'll spend about a month getting all the sections of the strategy written up. By the first, we'll need your NSF bios. We'll send you a template. It's essentially a 2-page resume, and we'll need letters of support from every single park and refuge and other partners who will be engaged initially, which could be folks like the Nature Conservancy or Friends Group, other NGOs or local schools. On the 15th of February, we hope to have a near complete draft out to all of you for your review, and then we're going to give you 10 days to send us your feedback, and on the 25th we will finalize your feedback and hopefully get our budget and all the numbers crunched, because we are definitely coordinating lots of moving cats. We're estimating about $1 million to $1.5 million the first 3 years, and a little bit less the last 2 years of the project. By March 1, a complete draft will be ready, which will then require any tweaks and fine-tuning of the budget. And on the 10th is the day that actually March 9th, that my sponsored research office needs to have the full proposal in the budget, because then it has to go up their chain of command before it gets submitted to NSF on the March 21 due date. So that's the plan, that's the big picture, that's where we're going. We are so excited to see you, and it'll be a wonderful and exciting event, and I'm so grateful for your time. Thank you again. See you soon.